Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the February 26th, 2025 City Council work session. Thank you for joining us today in this virtual meeting format. For work sessions like this one, there is no opportunity for public comment. Those wishing to access the meeting can do so by watching the live stream available on our website, the broadcast on Comcast Channel 22, or by calling into one of the phone numbers listed for this meeting on the Public Webcasts and Meetings Materials webpage of the City of Eugene website. Thank you all again for joining us. It's great to see you. I now call the February 26th, 2025 City Council work session to order. And I'll turn over to the City Manager to introduce today's topic, which is a work session on the Human Rights Commission work plan for 2024 to 2026.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'd like to welcome Commissioner Blake Burrell, who's joining us today, before I turn it over to our Central Service Director, Mia Carriaga, who's going to kick off our presentation.
Thank you, City Manager. I'm just going to share my screen to start. Okay, thank you. I'm Mia Carriaga, Central Services Director. I'm here today on behalf of Fabio Andrade, who's actually out of the office this week, and I'm happy to be accompanied by our Human Rights Commission Chair, Blake Burrell. So he'll be joining in the presentation in just a moment. We're here to present the work plan for the upcoming 2 years, and I'm going to briefly walk through a couple of highlights from the work plan that the HRC just wrapped up. Seems my slide does not want to advance. I'm going to keep talking while I keep working on advancing the slide. So I first wanted to share everybody who's currently on the commission. I think many of them are likely watching, and they've conducted a ton of work and put a lot of energy into getting out into the community on behalf of all of us and the work that they have been carrying out through the work plan over the last 2 years. So as I said, Blake Burrell is here and he's the chair, and I want to acknowledge that his term as an HRC member is wrapping up this June. And so Blake, just as we have council time here, I want to thank you for your service. It's been awesome to work with you, and I know you've put a ton of energy into this work over the last few years. Thomas Hira is currently the vice chair. Kiana Kabuko, Jackie Lowe, Cynthia Cannon-Poindexter, Silky Booker have all continued to act on the HRC, and we have 3 new members, Martha Baldwin, John Bradley, and Alaire Fajardo. I'm going to try one more time to get this to advance. Let me stop sharing for a moment. Apologies. Okay. So over the last year, one of the focuses of the commission, and they've been very intentional in this, has been to increase collaboration and communication with other boards and commissions. This, of course, increases the HRC's awareness of the work of other groups, and for the other groups, it provides a source for a strong equity lens as they conduct their work. I'm not going to read through these, but these are just some of the boards and commissions that the HRC focused on. There are others that they participate in to a lesser degree. So over the last work plan, so through the end of 2023 through the end of 2024, the Human Rights Commission held 39 public meetings, which is pretty impressive when you think that there are only 52 weeks in a year and not that many of them. These included their formal monthly meetings in addition to work groups, which you'll learn more about as Blake walks through the work plan. In addition, the HRC hosted a number of events and sponsored others. This means that the HRC may have dedicated HRC funds to support these events, helped promote them, or in many cases, commissioners actually attended and had speaking roles at each of these. And you'll notice that the span of these groups is quite broad and diverse, which is one of their intentions from the onset. And again, it just really highlights how much the commission is out in the community. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Burrell so that he can share with you the work plan for the upcoming 2 years.
Thank you, Mia, and thanks for the warm introduction, City Manager and Mayor. Council, thank you for taking the time to learn about what we've been doing as a Human Rights Commission and exploring our upcoming work plan proposal. So I appreciate your presence and attention today. So my name is Blake Burrell. I'm our Human Rights Commission Chair. I've been with the Human Rights Commission for 3 years, as Mia chaired. Y'all appointed me to this role about 3 years ago, and that time flies, truly. And I've been working with our work groups for several years prior to that. And today I get the privilege of discussing our work plan proposal. So the Human Rights Commission work plan is put together by Human Rights Commissioners, and we this year gathered input from our work group members and provided an opportunity for the public to provide input on a proposed work plan draft that was distributed to community partners by the Office of Equity and Community Engagement. So our HRC work plans focus on 3 primary goals. So goal number 1 was to take a leadership role in fostering respect for social equity, civil rights, and human rights in the community by engaging in education, outreach, listening sessions, and collaborations. Goal number 2 would be to maintain strategic HRC liaison assignments and engage in cooperative endeavors with the community and City of Eugene's advisory groups that support civil and human rights and social equity. And goal 3 is to study and recommend actions on civil and human rights and social equity issues, areas of concern to the community and city organization. So our Human Rights Commission has been very proactive in each of these areas, and most generally our commission breaks this down into thinking about our community-oriented capacity, our liaison role, and our advisory role within the community. And we've been working very diligently to increase that goal of mutual alignment with City Council by partnering with our staff and our City Council liaison. So Councilor Leach, I appreciate all the energy you've put into stewarding that role, and years previous. Councilor Keating also had the opportunity to work with you. So looking at our work plan this year, we have a set of goals in each of these areas that really are the derivative of feedback and input from those work group members and the public. And as you'll see working through this work plan, there are some items that are sustained goals that the Human Rights Commission very actively maintains as a aspect of their work plan. And you can see most of those in the community-oriented goals section and the advisory section. You'll see some additional work plan items were added with more specific targeted approach. In speaking with the Office of Equity and Community Engagement and other commissioners that were involved in this process, one of our primary areas of focus has been really delineating clear action items that the Human Rights Commission can actuate on, and setting a broad scope in which we have the ability to advise, so that Human Rights Commissioners who are coming into the Commission and the public see representation of a variety of ideas and interests from the community. And then the goal of the Human Rights Commission is to be approaching each of these goals in their work group meetings, so assigning all of these work plan items out to the working groups or those ad hoc committees, and partnering with City of Eugene staff whenever those work plan items require more staff resources from the City of Eugene. So you'll see three subcommittees at the bottom of this work plan. So our whole Community United work group, the goal of this work group is to identify and implement strategies to enhance inclusion of marginalized communities into the City of Eugene, local municipalities, educational institutions, healthcare networks, business community, and neighborhoods, and to help deter or respond to hate and bias and discrimination, including systemic and individual racism, heterosexism, transphobia, and anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and ableism. So this working group is currently being sorted by Commissioner Booker, Commissioner Kabuko, Commissioner Cannon Poindexter, and then we have there's an additional commissioner that will be joining that working group. And we have our homelessness and poverty work group, which is to monitor and report on laws and policies that have a disparate impact on people experiencing homelessness and poverty, propose policy recommendations to the City of Eugene City Council, and procedural recommendations on issues related to homelessness and poverty in the City of Eugene, and engage in advocacy efforts that combat the marginalization of people experiencing homelessness and poverty. This working group has been stewarded by myself, Commissioner Lowe, Vice Chair Hira, and Commissioner Cannon Poindexter, and then Commissioner Bradley will be joining. And then we've established a advisory group as an ad hoc committee in lieu of our advocacy working group, with the goal to maintain an introspective view in human rights issues in Eugene as they arise, and develop advisory communication and recommendations to City Council to respond and support human rights in Eugene. Develop and implement strategies to promote education, outreach, and public engagement. Propose and implement ad hoc groups to actuate on work plan items and human rights issues brought to the Human Rights Commission. And this is a advisory group that establishes a variety of our meeting agendas, as well as explores the ability to establish ad hoc capacity to partner with City of Eugene staff and engage the public. So there's a lot of opportunity for us to really engage with City of Eugene staff and that ad hoc capacity, and utilize the new Office of Equity Community Engagement, and host listening sessions and a variety of pieces that would be really beneficial to our commission and engagement with the public. So you will see a couple updates. We have taken the Economic Opportunities Work Group, which had been on the previous work plan, and we've consolidated those items within our Whole Community United and our Homelessness and Poverty Working Group to increase engagement from work group members and alleviate pressure on City of Eugene staff to facilitate public meetings. As Mia said, we had 39 public meetings last year, and that reflects those public capacities. But then we do also have an exceptional level of engagement within various outreach events and public forums. So our goal is to create a more sustainable structure for the Human Rights Commission and the staff supporting the group. So you'll see that reduction in our working groups, but the items that we're still trying to actuate on actually fit more comfortably within those two other working groups, and hopefully alleviate some of that pressure that we've explored with the city manager and the central services director. So yeah, I think that that's a pretty broad overview of what we're doing. I've refrained from going into specific work planning items that may have been proposed. So if you have any questions on this work plan, the current structure, or those work plan items, I'm happy to facilitate any dialogue or answer any questions. But I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Commissioner Burrell and staff, for that presentation. Very much appreciated. Lots of detail there, and probably some good discussion for today. So I will now open the floor for council discussion. City Councilor Leach.
Hey, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mia, for filling in for Fabio today, and thank you, Commissioner Burrell. It's been such a pleasure to be able to work with the commission over the last year and a half as the council liaison. And, you know, I'm just always really impressed, you know, every time I join a meeting or in our retreat over the summer with all of the commissioners and the commitment to the work that we all are doing. I really appreciate the process that you went through in developing the work plan. I think your goals are great. I know that we have also discussed how to better kind of align with council priorities and what is coming up on council, and how to help inform us in kind of that advisory capacity for certain human rights issues that are coming up in the community. And we've, you know, talked about, you know, a lot of different ways that we can do that. I have been given a spot in each of the commission meetings just to kind of discuss what might be coming up in the next month or so, so that they can, tell me or devise some kind of, write a memo, or if there's anyone that wants to come testify, those kinds of things. And I think that's excellent. I hope that we can continue working together in that way. And I'm really sad to see you go, Commissioner. You're such an amazing leader, and I know very respected among the commission. So very, very grateful and appreciative of your work. And I wish you the best in all of the next set of endeavors that I'm sure that you are off to.
Thank you, Councilor Leach.
Councilor Kaczynski.
Thank you, and thank you so much for all of the work that you've been doing for our community. I had a question, which is, when I look at sort of when this work plan was written and when it started being created, that was back in October of 2024. Since that time, it feels like there have been, I won't say feels like, there have been a number of threats and coming down, particularly from the federal government, particularly surrounding immigrant and trans community members. How is that being sort of factored into the work plan and the work that you're going to be doing over the next year?
Yeah, that's a fabulous question, and it has been a tumultuous 2025, and our commission has been developing some preemptive strategies, looking at some of the proposed policies that were projected within the new administration and a variety of ordinance issues and local matters that have come up for those communities prior to the change within the federal government. One of the ideas that we had early in our development phase was engaging members of the community in those dialogues and actually providing an opportunity for that feedback from different community-based organizations or members of the public. And then we hosted a panel in December where we actually engaged in topics related to some of the artifacts of Project 25 that were going to be discussed and brought into the policy space that our community may have to navigate. So one of the primary mechanisms within our work plan that we discuss is generating a work plan that is both specific and broad, and ensuring that the Human Rights Commission focuses on the entire scope of human rights. And this has been a critique that has been delivered where sometimes there are very specific local issues that get a significant amount of attention. And we've interacted with the public in hearing the feedback that we need to make sure that we're hearing all voices and have an opportunity for engagement with a diverse sector of Eugenians and members of our jurisdiction. So one of the primary working groups that we're actually working with our staff liaison, Melissa Carino, with, is the Whole Community United working group, where a lot of those specific policy issues will be addressed. And if we see more localized impact, you'll see changes in the Whole Community United description, where we actually included that liaison capacity with a couple different types of organizations. So we expanded that language to include local municipalities, educational institutions, healthcare networks, business community, and neighborhoods, really with the goal that we have an opportunity to expand the scope of who we're discussing these topics with. And I think that will afford us the space to examine that. Work plan item 1.6 also examines, gives us the space to examine previous reports that were developed, the Marginalized Voices report in 2017, the Persecution of the Unhoused report in 2019, and then our community needs assessment, which was worked on between 2021 and 2022, all of which have brought in a lens of various marginalized communities that might be impacted by changes at the federal level and the state and local level as well. So yeah, I hope that provides a little lens into what we're doing.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for your question.
Councilor Zelenka.
Yeah, Blake, thank you so much for your service and for your work on the Human Rights Commission. You made a difference, so thank you for that. I think the work plan's good. It's very readable, which is which is helpful and concise. I really like the way that it's structured with the leadership role, the liaison role, and the advisory role. And I think that's a good way to think about the work that the commission does, and with all the specifics in there and figuring out who does what. The only criticism I'd have is this is a lot of work. If you accomplish a quarter of this, that would be great. I'm wondering if you could address. It's got a broad scope, and you just kind of mentioned that. But how do you think the commission? And you get free reign because you're going off, right? So how do you think the commission's going to be able to work through all of this?
Yeah, that's a great question.
That's not really the goal.
Yeah, no, and that's a great question. And Councilor Zelenka, I've actually heard you kind of ask this question of previous chairs, and a thought around how does the Human Rights Commission engage this entire work plan, and are each of these items something that we can produce a deliverable on, or do we have kind of a strategy or plan for actuating on each of them? And what I would say is, echoing that sentiment I shared surrounding that breadth, representing human rights is a very large task. Human rights encompasses so many different sectors of society that it's really important for our commission to include those voices and then determine what our deliverables or our action items around all of those different identity groups might be. And what I think has worked best while I've been with the Human Rights Commission has been really integrating the work plan items into our working groups and staying very focused on reflecting on our work plan and taking what local ordinance changes or proposals or social issues that present themselves and really bringing in that work plan to those issues. And what I found by providing a broader scope in this is that it allows us to be more mobile whenever things arise that we may not expect. I think to this question around, how will we address current needs that come up due to recent shifts in federal policy? We have that mobility because of this breadth. And what I do think that means is that there are work plan items on here that may be sustained throughout multiple years and through multiple commissioners, or a commissioner may come in with a different lens that really wants to dive into a specific topic. And that's one of the beauties, is just the diversity of this commission and the talents that different people bring. As I step away, there'll be someone that fills my shoes that may have a different set of knowledge or lived experience that might inform how they approach these issues. But what I would most definitely emphasize is that whenever we are in a place, whether it be making inquiries or trying to work as an advisor to council, we have to have that broader scope, or else it does slow the process to remedy or address social issues that may have come up that were unexpected, or policy issues that may come into play. So that is why it is more broad. And we're hoping that by making some targeted language around here are action items associated with this breadth, may give those working groups and commissioners more continuity and clarity on what items they're supposed to deliver to council. So I hope that answers your question and gives a little scope of our philosophy of how this is developed.
No, it does, and I agree with that. And these are all of our boards and commissions are voluntary groups. So when people come on, they what tends to happen is the issues that they want to work on or think are important are the ones that get worked on. And so people bring their own ideas about what's important and what they want to work on within the confines of each of these boards and commissions, like the Human Rights Commission, and then those are the things that get done. So, and that's totally fine, because that's why we have all these boards and commissions, and that's why we have numerous people, and we don't dictate exactly what you should do, but we do approve and listen to what you have to say. I have. You've been here a while, and you're going off, so I have two questions for you. What do you think's been the one or two things that the Human Rights Commission has done in your tenure that have been the most impactful or most important while you've been there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've been on the Human Rights Commission for 3 years, and I think one of my, I probably have 10 answers to this question, but I'll share what I think.
One or two.
Yeah, right. I think that one of the most significant aspects of having a Human Rights Commission within the city of Eugene is that it is actually somewhat uncommon within jurisdictions to have an advisory group working with a legislative body and a city organization that can advise from a specific lens and through the lens of human rights. Having an advisory group that can really examine what we are doing through that lens and provide feedback through a space of who we want to be as a society. Who do we want to be as a municipality? That's the question I get to ask through this capacity. It's not always about what's possible immediately right now. What can we do to remedy this? We're talking about large social issues. We're talking about large systemic and structural pieces that are going to take years and years and years to address. And I think one of the most impactful components is that you have members of the public from historically marginalized communities and different professional paradigms that get to share a lens from their more nuanced intersection of identity. And we get to challenge you all and advise you all on what to reach for. And we get to say, hey, have you thought about the disparate impact for this group? Have you thought about this social sector of Eugenians? Have we considered the potential ramifications of this suggestion? And we get to ask that question. What are we reaching for? And are we putting any barriers in the way of us aspiring towards maintaining human rights within this jurisdiction? And I think that's been one of the most profound experiences for me, is getting to think through this lens and then deliver policy or procedural recommendations that address the gaps and the nuances. And I do appreciate the work that both the city organization and council has put into engaging and legitimizing our body through the investment of their time and resources. Speaking with previous chairs, what we have is our voice, and we have the ability to share our perspective. And then we put that on your all's plate to decide what you want to do with that and to make that decision. And I think just having the privilege to be in that room and to share those ideas and to ask those questions is probably one of the most unique and profound aspects of having a Human Rights Commission. And if we can change policy or some procedures and make that incremental change towards the society that we want to be in, I think then we're doing the right thing. So, yeah.
Well said. I see why they elected you chair. My other question, taking out of the Human Rights Commission, and looking at the community, in your tenure, have you seen the nature of what the communities is concerned about, their attitudes about human rights and discrimination, and that stuff change since you've been on the commission? And in particular, the last 6 months.
Yeah.
It's about the community, not about the HRC.
Yeah, I think looking at the city of Eugene, and I can only speak from my paradigm and exposure to different communities. My professional work centers around homelessness and poverty. So I interact with a lot of Eugenians that are living in what I would deem to be a humanitarian crisis and having a lot of challenges navigating our current social and political landscape and housing market. And those aspects, a sentiment shared by that community is a lot of disillusionment and, a fear that they will not have access to a resource to stabilize. And I know we have a lot of conversations about shelter and housing and different ways to support that community. But I do think that that community has always presented that the city of Eugene is a very challenging landscape to navigate and to find a stable place to be. So that's a paradigm that I really do look through often in my professional work and life centers around working with that marginalized community. But I think more broadly, Eugenians, when you look at your hate and bias reporting and some of the sentiments, the rise of hate groups within and hate and bias incidents within our region, and some of the inflammatory discourse and rhetoric that does seem to amplify during election years, and with changes in federal administration, I think that there are a lot of communities that have some fear as to how federal policy are going to manifest within our state and our jurisdiction. And we've had a lot of reassurance from municipal leaders about how we'll be responding to different things that come into our local landscape. And that's something that I think that we will need to monitor to make sure that people who are in marginalized communities, whether it be our trans community or folks who are immigrants or in immigrant communities and spaces, Black communities, we really do have to build the space and time to hear the nuance of what they're articulating and what they're experiencing more globally. And unfortunately, what I see with that discourse and the daily bombardment of different social ideals that are counter to human rights philosophy, that this will be something that we will need to manage and support and create really proactive strategies to support those communities. But I do see the city of Eugene maintaining its investment and sustaining its exposure to different communities, most recently hosting listening sessions with the Office of Equity and Community Engagement and providing people from various social backgrounds to share how they're doing. And our Commissioner Cannon Poindexter shared a really profound testimony of her experiences speaking with folks at those listening sessions and taking those observations. So I think that we're doing a lot of work to engage and communicate, and it will be a constant reminder for us. I think we need to have that constant reminder within us to support and to see and to validate the unique experiences of Eugenians that may be impacted right now. So, yeah.
Yeah. Again, thanks for your work, Blake, on the Human Rights Commission.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for your questions, Councilors Linka.
Any other councilors who'd like to join the queue? Councilor Ye.
Sorry, I can't do my buttons this morning. Thank you. So thank you, Commissioner Burrell and staff for coming here today. I have a memory that I hope is not a false memory of last year when you were here. And I think that you were talking about how there was going to be an effort to get in contact with other human rights commissions across the state and do some checking in and coordinating. And I'm wondering if that happened and what you learned from that.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. So this idea, Chair Lemons and Vice Chair Hira and I were discussing a desire for exploring a more statewide network of human rights commissions to talk about issues impacting different jurisdictions throughout the state. And we did have some preliminary meetings with a commissioner from Salem, who was connecting us with individuals from Multnomah County. And one of the broader goals that we've articulated with that is exploring the potential for a public event or panel discussions or a conference-style event similar to our human rights retreat, where we could have that conversation, and we were exploring whether it would be a public forum or something that we would host at the library, engaging members of the public. But I think there's a lot of opportunity for that because there are solutions that happen and precedents that are set within other jurisdictions that I think members of the public and on this commission would benefit from. So yes, we have had those dialogues. It was something that we're exploring. The equity analyst with the Office of Equity and Community Engagement was in conversation with Salem about engaging with similar personnel to explore structuring that department or structuring that type of event with their department. So that's something that we'll need to continue to connect with the Office of Equity and Community Engagement with and see if those communications have continued to be stewarded and what we might be able to organize. But I think it would be a very profound component for the Human Rights Commission to explore and sustain because we don't need to do it alone. There's a lot of great minds in the state of Oregon that we can be connecting with and learning from.
Great, thank you so much. I really liked the idea when you guys switched to the 2-year plan, work plan, instead of doing it every single year. I think that's really smart. And I'm obviously next year will be a new work plan because then it'll be a new 2-year work plan. But I'm wondering if we can't keep in mind for, I guess that would be 2027 to use, since it will be the same work plan and you're the commission would just be updating us on what you've done halfway through, that maybe we could use this time to have a little more chance to hear about some of the things that have been worked on. I mean, we won't need this full, obviously we're going to be done kind of early, right? It seems like it would be nice to be able to use this time a little better. Like you said, we don't, getting your voices out is your power. And so, memos are great and I read them and that's there's nothing wrong with that. But having FaceTime with folks is very powerful, and being able to ask. Sometimes I might not know the right question to ask, but a commissioner might bring something up and then I've just learned something, very important that I didn't even know I didn't know. So I'm wondering if, that's probably a staff thing to kind of think about how we might use this time in between, in the middle of the work plan next time, to just be able to have more of that dialogue with the commission.
Yeah, that's a fabulous suggestion. And a practice that the Office of Equity and Community Engagement has had with us has been producing basically status updates. And it's something that's usually centered around our quarterly meetings with the mayor and city manager. So that may be something that when we provide that status update, that there's some sort of memo or document that's sent to council. And I think it would be really beneficial for you all to see what we're focused on and what progress is being made in what areas and how that might align with different policy issues or even conversations with the public within your wards that you may want us to be aware of. So I think it's a really fabulous suggestion, Councilor Yeh.
That's great. As you can imagine, we're very connected to the boards and commissions we're on, and we know all about them and what they're doing and their past, and the ones that you're not on, at least I shouldn't talk for other people, feel a little disconnected, and I feel like the Human Rights Commission is a very important commission that we're having, and it's also information that isn't always easy to find or get yourself, where others you might be able to look up. This is a little more needing to have people connections, and I'm probably not explaining this right, but I feel like you're nodding, so you get what I'm trying to say. So, all right, thank you.
Yes, I hear you. I think there are quite a few administrative mechanisms we could put in place. We can't be everywhere all at once, even if we try, and that's so true. And so finding ways to get you all more plugged in and informed, I think would be a great project with staff and the commission.
Not seeing other hands in the queue, and Commissioner, I actually have a couple of questions for you. I want to provide an opportunity for you to share a little bit more about the background in this work plan. So I'll insert myself into the queue. I have limiting myself to one question for each of the goals, but the first one picks up on what Councillor Ye was just referring to, that it's 1.17 talks about coordination with other boards and commissions in Oregon and across the state related to human rights issues and social progress. It's in my mind. That one in particular caught my attention this weekend because I spent a lot of time in the last 3 days advocating for state funding for a sustainable shelter system. And I'm curious if the Human Rights Commission has discussed ways in which when really funding is one of the primary barriers that we face to being able to do more of what we've identified as important to meeting our community's needs, has the Commission talked about even something as straightforward as sending a letter of support or advocating for funding?
Yeah, so I think probably my most specific answer to that is that we do spend a lot of our time centering in on local policy issues and organizational matters. And so looking at county or statewide pieces, we can share a perspective and we can advise the city organization, but there is a scope component. So I think one of the pieces when we start talking about advocacy for funding or things that might interact with other jurisdictions is we do seek a lot of guidance from city staff of what's within scope. And one of the things that I think that I would like us to explore is whenever we have representatives from city government going and advocating for policy on behalf of the city organization or participating in more public dialogues at the state level, I think that there could be a more streamlined avenue for engaging our voice and asking us to explore a topic and provide a statement as a Human Rights Commission that could be brought into a package that, you may say, our city organization supports this, and XYZ board and commission also has supported this, so that you're demonstrating that public input component as well. And all of that comes with timing. We have our formal meeting once a month, and that's where we do a lot of our discussions and votes. And so we have to have those statements prepared in the packet, reviewed and approved for them to be delivered. So, you're looking at probably about a 2 to 3 month timeline for us to be able to produce a statement, get it in front of everyone for it to be delivered at that level. But I certainly think there's a pathway for that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate how the Commission is thinking of that networked effort. My second question is related to 2.9. And also because I've been doing some work related to our intergovernmental relations and our tribal councils. And this point of the work plan raises a question about coordination with a liaison to conduct outreach and research legislative models and proposing compositions of council that would incorporate Indigenous communities who once resided in Kalapuya Ali'i. And I just have questions for you about this in part because we do recognize our tribal nations as partners and as inherently sovereign in their own establishment. And I'm just curious if you could share more about the background or motivation related to that point in the work plan.
Yeah, so that work plan item is a derivative of multiple conversations surrounding our practice of land acknowledgement and looking at our intergovernmental relations framework with Indigenous peoples residing in Oregon and thinking about meaningful ways for participation in local decisions and policy. So part of this goal in identifying that multicultural liaison position is that staff member is responsible for intergovernmental relations with most of those communities. And one of the elements that I think we've explored is how do we engage communities, historically marginalized communities, in the decision-making process. And looking at the city of Eugene and its current relationship with the land that we reside on, right? Acknowledging that we do live in an area that was colonized and that there are disparate impacts and direct impacts on Indigenous communities that we have a practice of acknowledging as a community. Are there more meaningful ways for participation in decisions being made about the land that we're living on? Are there ways that representatives from that community may want to engage our local government that we're currently not engaging? And I think that right now that's in the question phase. We're in a state of inquiry and asking for that scope to steward those conversations and see what would be a a positive way to engage that dialogue and to integrate that voice into local governance. So that's really the derivative of that. And we're in an inquiry phase. And I think it's something for us to explore and for us to examine what that relationship might look like for local governance.
Thank you for that background, and I'm sure that we will talk more about this. Those relationships are very important to the city and to our larger community. Last question, quickly, in Goal 3, your advisory role, and this relates to development of city's communications strategy. And this caught my attention because it's such an important part of the work that we are all trying to do together in community to have important conversations, make important decisions, and then also close the loop on all of that. And I just wanted to ask if you could share a little bit more about what you are thinking about, what the different subcommittees are thinking about, and also offer that I'm always curious to know if there is information that you are wanting to be, that the Human Rights Commission is wanting to work on sharing more broadly out into the public.
Yeah, I think part of our public engagement component is that the Human Rights Commission does play a role in representing city government in a very public capacity, and not just in the public meetings, but we do have the outreach where we're tabling with City of Eugene staff. We may be hosting forums or panels or different things on behalf of the commission and trying to engage the community. And what I think could be really beneficial is for us to provide a lens into specific groups and identities that we represent or work with to help with the orientation of different types of communications from the lens of how it's being perceived by the public, and what types of communications may be needed or more culturally responsive for specific groups whenever certain issues arise. I'm thinking most specifically whenever we think about like our hate and bias reporting, and we have a lot of individuals in the city of Eugene who don't know about hate and bias reporting. They don't know what constitutes as a bias incident or a hate crime. And, we are provided monthly reports, we're sent the information, we're asked to examine those, and the Office of Equity and Community Engagement is very proactive in delivering information about those reporting systems and those outcomes, but we may have a opportunity to liaison and to talk about how to engage different communities within different cultural contexts or forums that may not be explored right now. So I think there's been a lot of effort in that space. One area of alignment that we explored was particularly the police auditor's office and their goal in communicating with marginalized communities. And we've included the police auditor's office at tabling events with the Office of Equity and Community Engagement and the Human Rights Commission to demonstrate that, one, there is an alignment for public accountability, and that is an independent auditing body that the public should be aware of, so that the city organization has that feedback with particular groups that may not always be comfortable liaisoning with that department. And so we've had some really valuable bridge building in that space, and I think that's where more broadly finding meaningful pathways for the Human Rights Commission to engage with staff that are involved in that communications approach. It may help you reach all sectors of our community.
Thank you for those excellent suggestions and examples. Councillor Keating.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner, thank you for your service. And it's been a pleasure to work with you and the Human Rights Commission. I just want to make sure I'm picking up what you're putting down. The Human Rights Commission would be interested in exploring partnerships or providing testimony if a certain state senator, or any lawmaker for that matter, were advocating for a bill that would provide that crimes such as obstructing justice or interfering with a peace officer or refusing to assist a peace officer do not apply to a person if they're informing another person of their civil or other rights.
So are you referencing a specific policy measure that's in place currently?
A potential policy, a potential law. What I wanted to just make certain of, Blake, if there is such a bill moving forward that either strengthens a Good Samaritan law or sharpens existing law that would protect any individual who would be providing information to other residents about their rights, their civil rights, that is something that the Human Rights Commission would be interested in standing shoulder to shoulder with the lawmaker here in Salem.
So I'll have to answer that with a deference to procedural aspects. Is that I can't, in this capacity, actually represent the Human Rights Commission's decision to endorse or engage with a specific policy measure. However, from a lens of what the Human Rights Commission's relationship with City Council could be, is if you have a specific policy measure that you would like the Human Rights Commission to provide input on, that should be delivered through the council liaison or to the Office of Equity and Community Engagement for us to examine and provide input on. And I think that is the type of thing that when we're focused on this localized perspective, we often don't know what elements the city organization or council may be exploring and how those policies could impact our local jurisdiction. So something such as a proposed measure that you're speaking about should be sent on behalf of council to the Human Rights Commission to examine, and should the commission be compelled to provide a response, that's a statement or an inquiry that we could deliver, but we would have to go through the full approval of the commission to make sure that we're representing the diverse voice of the commission and that everyone is in understanding of what the implications or mechanisms being inquired about are communicating. So I think that there's a lot of space for delivering that type of information to our body and streamlining that communication through our council liaison of the Office of Equity and Community Engagement.
Great. I appreciate the process check. Thank you. Could you clarify if the Human Rights Commission has had conversations revolving around the need for community members to stand up and speak out if fellow Oregon residents are unfairly or illegally targeted to either show documentation or are detained just because of the color of their skin?
So our most recent Human Rights Commission did touch on a series of immigration-related challenges, and we have an ad hoc committee who is prepared to provide statements on behalf of the Human Rights Commission regarding specific policy matters happening. And that committee will be putting together a variety of external communications on behalf of the Commission and doing that in an ad hoc capacity and then delivering that to the Human Rights Commission for approval within probably the next 2 weeks. So that would be our current status in discussing those types of matters as a commission.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Blake, for your service, and thank you for your attention to detail.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Keating.
Being no other councilors in the queue, I will now turn to the council president to put a motion forward.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the Human Rights Commission 2024-26 work plan as presented in attachment B.
Second.
Further discussion from council? Seeing none, I will now take a vote for this motion. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All opposed? 0, and that motion passes. The vote of 8-0. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Commissioner Burrell, for your service to our community, your care with this work, your commitment, so important. Thank you to the entire Human Rights Commission. And with that, this concludes our agenda for today. We'll see you all soon.
Thank you.